my name too.
I do not see John Jacob Jingleheimer Smith.
That's my name too.
His name is my name too.
That was one of the one songs that I hated singing.
So whenever we go out,
it never made any sense to me either. It's
the people only shout.
I didn't hate it. I was just like, why is this a song?
Like, this isn't even enjoyable. It feels more like, something you're being punished.
You really don't see it, do you?
I always wondered when you're supposed to stop. Like, because the class would stop and it would still keep going in my head. Like, it was my first earworm. Like, what?
La, 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 la.
99 bottles of beer on the wall.
Well, at least that one has a definite stop. We can't start going negative beer.
I mean, yeah.
But you're so sick of it before it stops.
Yeah. Second verse, same as the first.
Henry VIII.
I'm Henry VIII. I am.
That always reminds me of the movie Ghost. Remember that scene?
Oh yeah.
Where he's bugging Whoopi, and he's like, because she's like, "You're a ghost. I'm not paying attention to you." And he's like, "No, you can hear me, and I'm going to sing Henry VIII." And finally, she just freaks out and is like, "Okay, I'll help you."
Shall we break for Daily Tech News Show?
Oh,
yes.
That's what my bumper sticker says.
If you want to.
Daily Tech News Show. All right, here we go. 3, 2. Michael Yasui has supported independent tech news directly for 5 years. You can be like Michael. Become a DTNS member right now at patreon.com/DTNS. This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, March 18th, 2019 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Feline, I'm Sarah Lane.
And from elsewhere in the LA County area, I'm Roger Chang, the show's producer.
Our intern Amos is alongside as well. Good day, Amos.
Hello.
We are going to talk about some fintech stuff later on, sort of from the perspective of here's some stuff you guys should be aware of that maybe you're not aware of. It's not only a big part of the tech industry, but it has effects that sometimes people aren't even allowed to talk about. So let's start with a few tech things you should know.
Apple announced updated iPads on Monday. A new iPad mini has an A12 Bionic processor, support for the older Lightning-connected Apple Pencil, Touch ID, and a True Tone display starting at $399. A new iPad Air has an A12 processor, Apple's Pencil support, Touch ID, and a Smart Keyboard support starting at $499. Both use Apple's Lightning connector and offer Wi-Fi or LTE models.
Facebook said it took down 1.5 million videos worldwide of footage from the Christchurch, New Zealand shooting within 24 hours of the attack. 1.2 million of them were blocked at upload. The Washington Post reports YouTube found its detection of video was ineffective, leading YouTube Chief Product Officer Neil Moen to bypass human moderators and use an AI solution to quickly block videos. Moen also decided to temporarily disable searching for recent uploads and keyword completions.
In its forthcoming IPO, Lyft will offer 30.8 million shares at $62 to $68 each, seeking to raise a total of $2.1 billion, according to a new regulatory filing. According to sources speaking to Bloomberg, the company would be valued between $21 billion and $23 billion post-IPO.
Let's talk a little bit about Myspace. Unless you already saw this story, you probably weren't expecting me to say that, but music, photos, videos, anything you uploaded to Myspace between 2003 and 2015 may no longer be accessible due to what the company told the BBC was the fault of a server migration project. Now, that's news today because people noticed. Ars Technica reports Myspace admitted the fact to some users 7 or 8 months ago, but not that many people really cared, I guess. Back in its heyday, Myspace was a bit like SoundCloud, where smaller artists uploaded music, often found followings on the platform. Previously, the company said it was working on a fix when music links on Myspace stopped working. If you're worried this could happen somewhere else where you've stored a lot of media, Cory Doctorow at Boing Boing notes that the Internet Archive hosts anything freely distributable for free forever and has mirrors for their servers in California, Egypt, and Amsterdam. So
that sounds like something, Tom, you might remind people as well.
Yeah, well, I think Cory Doctorow may be the person who tipped me off to archive.org years ago. But yeah, I am frequently telling people about archive.org, especially if you're a small podcaster just getting started. It's a great place to host your podcast.
I haven't used Myspace in many years. I was active on it back in the day before Facebook came along. And, I actually sort of dwindled my use on MySpace, not really to jump over to Facebook. There was a lull that I had where I think a lot of people literally left MySpace for Facebook. So I was a little bit different in that regard. Didn't host a lot of content there. Can't even remember if there were photos that were on MySpace of mine that weren't elsewhere. So it doesn't totally matter, but yeah, I mean, it was a big part of a lot of people's lives, social lives, certainly for a long time. And it's kind of funny that the company said for so long, yeah, we're working on it. And then finally was like, yeah, right, that's
well, and archive.org famously has the project that'll let you go back and look at what websites looked like back years ago, right?
Yeah.
So theoretically, some of that stuff might still be available that way.
Salvageable, yeah.
But no one told the archive project that this was happening, unlike Google Plus, where the archive.org is out there actively trying to save as much of Google Plus as possible before it gets taken down by Google. They didn't know this happened because MySpace didn't tell anybody, which makes a lot of people wonder, was it a mistake? Or was it just not caring and saying, I don't think anybody cares about this old stuff. It sure is a whole lot easier to migrate the server if we just delete it.
That would be quite an assumption. Not that I would put it past any company to just be like, we don't care anymore. But yeah, I can't imagine that usage was high enough that they thought that there would be too much outrage. But there would be outrage if this happened to Facebook. Now, of course, Facebook is a completely different company. It's a whole new world that we're living in. But I think
people use it.
Right. And Corey and others, make good points that sure, this happened to MySpace, which is not in wide use anymore. But if it did happen to a social network or some sort of a platform that you do have a lot of media on, what's your alternative? You kind of want to assume that this will happen to your favorite network and have a backup plan.
It may not even be a good reminder, but it's a reminder that if you're not storing your stuff, there's a risk it could go away.
A study sponsored by Apple assessing whether the pulse sensor on Apple Watch Series 1, 2, and 3 can pick up rhythm irregularities found only 34% of participants received an alert of an irregular pulse on their watch and then went on to have a confirmed case of atrial fibrillation. But the study preceded Apple's Series 4 watch, which includes an electrocardiograph and features monitoring heart activity. The study monitored almost 420,000 people, so it's a pretty big sample size, 25,000 of whom were 65 years old or older, generally the highest risk of age groups. The watches prompted users to set up a telemedicine consultation with a doctor that was involved in the study if something was detective. And then the notified users could then get a separate ECS patch to record their heart's electrical rhythms for comparison with watch data.
Yeah. There's a little bit of debate over whether the 34% is good or bad. Detecting a sign of atrial fibrillation because it is so intermittent doesn't mean you would necessarily find it again the next week.
Right.
So that's not a big deal. Some folks are saying, you know what, for a wearable watch that also is, meant for listening to your podcasts, not bad. Other doctors are saying, yeah, not bad, but if you don't want people relying on this and having a bunch of false positives and flooding your doctor's office with people who are anxious and upset, and then it turns out to be nothing. So it is kind of on that border of whether this is entirely useful medically or not. But that said, this is a study to kind of say, hey, was the previous version of the watch good at this? It's pretty close. Maybe the next version will be better, or maybe somebody else will come along with something that's even better out there. But it's progress. It's good progress towards being able to monitor your own heart health more easily, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely side with the false positive is better than not detecting something that could be extremely dangerous for my health. I definitely I empathize or sympathize, I guess, with doctors who might be unnecessarily busy with a bunch of people, hypochondriacs who are like, my watch said I'm going to die. Yeah. But and that is a really valid point. I mean, there's no reason to scare people if you don't have to. But as the article pointed out, the study was conducted before Apple's Series 4, which is designed to be better at this type of thing. 34% to me is okay. It's less than half of the time correct, but
well, 34% of the time someone experienced the atrial fibrillation again within the next week. Right. That's actually, because atrial fibrillation is so intermittent, as I said, that's actually not small.
You're right.
because people who legitimately felt it might not have it again for another week. And this would have been an accurate reading, but it was missed. So there's a lot of stats that can lead you astray if you try to use common sense. You really do. This is why you need medical practitioners to help you guide through this, to go like, well, 34% might not sound like big, but it's bigger than it seems. Also, false positives can be dangerous. If you get a false positive in certain conditions, not necessarily this one, they can lead to treatment methods that cause side effects that you wouldn't have needed to experience otherwise. So you do want to get this stuff right. That said, I don't think this is a bad thing at all, because it's research, because it's saying, hey, let's look at this, and there aren't too many downsides.
Yeah, I think overall we seem to be heading in the right direction. Watches are getting better at helping us stay healthy, and that's good.
OneWeb has raised $1.25 billion in funding in order to assure it will launch its global high-speed broadband network in 2021. They say we always targeted 2021, but having this latest round makes sure we're going to do it. OneWeb successfully launched its first satellites last month. Investors include SoftBank, the government of Rwanda, Coca-Cola, Qualcomm, Richard Branson's Virgin Group, among many others. OneWeb said it can now start monthly satellite launches by the end of the year. It needs at least 650 units in orbit for minimum global coverage. They think they might want to have around 2,000 up there. And they're not the only company doing it. SpaceX, probably the most famous that has ambitions to do this, and Luxembourg-based Leosat also pursuing this. But OneWeb has the first mover advantage, whether that's good or not. We talk about how it isn't always necessarily good, but in something as difficult as satellite broadcast, it might be. And the reason someone like the government of Rwanda wants to back this is it's targeted at rural areas in developing countries where it is difficult to roll out infrastructure, but the benefits of having connectivity can be great.
It's too bad that the companies can't all band together to provide better coverage right out of the gate. But that's, you could say that like, cell carrier.
But then wouldn't you be sitting there saying like, why don't we have more competition? There's only this one company and they all provided it. This is just a really complicated thing, I think.
Yeah. I sort of imagined like satellites with Coca-Cola stickers on the side, but you're not going to be able to see any of this stuff. It's something that, Coca-Cola can say, we're providing, internet access to every inch of the world. But yeah, I have to admit, I haven't thought about OneWeb in a while, but it certainly has, big companies behind it. And quite honestly, SpaceX hasn't talked much about their satellite initiative lately, at least not anything that, we've covered on the show, or that's really jumped out to me.
Well, SpaceX is busy with manned missions, right?
Yeah,
so I'm not going to fault them for that. They have other ambitions as well, and they want to get the Dragon capsule working and start to do regular private launches, and then they'll start launching their own satellites. So I have no doubt we'll be hearing from them shortly.
Somebody else we'll be hearing from shortly is Apple. The New York Times reports more on the alleged culture clash between TV and movie producers and Apple. One new complaint being reported is that Apple is too controlling in how its products are shown. Shocker. Can't imagine. There's also a reprise of the complaints that Apple is uncommunicative about release dates and marketing plans. Previously, the Wall Street Journal reported that Apple was resistant to content deemed mature in the programming it's commissioning. And 1 week, on March 25th, we will likely find out at least a little bit more directly from Apple about its 24 series and handful of movies in the works.
Yeah, we'll be talking about this next Monday, I'm sure. But I did find it really struck a chord, having done some sponsored videos in the past, worked at companies like CNET that had vendor-involved videos being produced around me, and the particularness that clients can have when they're paying for something in how their product is put. Just pulling something out of popular culture right now, you see the Microsoft Surface everywhere, right? I'm sure there's lots of discussions with the NFL about how to properly show the Surface being used on the sidelines. And certainly in more controlled circumstances where the Surface is put into a show, I bet Microsoft has all kinds of opinions about how that's supposed to work. Now imagine that it's not just Microsoft paying for placement of their products, but Microsoft actually directly funding the content itself and showing up and saying, hey, Steven, we noticed you used the iPhone in your Amazing Story episode, but you didn't really show off to best advantage. Like, that's a fight that was bound to happen for sure.
Yeah. I'm also impressed that Apple has possibly 24 series in the works. And I know that they're not all going to launch on the same day. That would be crazy, but that's a lot of content. I bring it on. I need a new series. Actually, I don't. I can't get through the ones I'm watching already, but I want a new series.
Stanford announced the launch of the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. It's an interdisciplinary hub for researchers and students to work toward a human set of values for AI, and as a resource for politicians and policymakers to understand more about how AI actually works. The Institute aims to raise $1 billion for research, cloud processing, and luring talent from other startups to work at it. Advisory board includes former Alphabet or Google chairman Eric Schmidt, LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, former Yahoo chief executive Marissa Mayer, Yahoo co-founder Jerry Yang. If you're like, hey, I wondered what all those people were up to lately. Well, now you know they're working on the board at least part of the time for the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. You know, OpenAI was started with similar ideas of like helping us explore ethically viable uses for AI. So it's good to see more of these kinds of organizations coming into being.
What would we think besides ethics, which in general people agree on, you know, codes of ethics in general?
Around AI though, that's where it does get debatable. But sure,
when we talk about a human-based value system, I wonder, you know, ethics society, like what are we talking about?
Well, I that's the thing. Like you say we all agree, like, oh, murder bad.
Well, I
right?
said in general.
Yeah.
Some people think murder's cool, but not many.
but I think it's fair to say most people we care about thinks murder is bad.
Yes.
It's the edge cases where it's like, yeah, but what if we used AI to remotely monitor the guns? And someone's like, no, not okay at all. Like you don't want them in any way connected to a firearm, where others are like, look, monitoring the guns and allowing someone that's human to come in and make sure before they start firing. I mean, that's okay. Or if a human says, oh, put that spread pattern over there against that enemy, that's okay. Right. I think that those little border cases is where it gets weird. And that's just, I'm just bringing up military because that's the easiest one for people to wrap their heads around. That's probably not even the majority of these conversations. They're about using it so that you don't manipulate people, right? I mean, that's one of the big fears, is that AI will get so smart that it can just trick me by, you know, maneuvering the levers of what I like and my motivations into doing things that are against my best interests.
Also, not one, but two former Yahoo folks as sitting at the board.
Yeah. Or have they been replaced by artificial intelligence?
I always knew Jerry Yang was a little off.
He was just a little too smart. Folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, be sure to subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com. E-commerce has driven up the value of card payment processing. You see all around you, easier than ever, instant payment options like Venmo, for instance. That's the most popular. Billion-dollar companies you've likely never heard of are raking in the profits because of this increased use. And it's also likely not great for your local community bank or federal credit union. Now, every time you tap to pay for coffee, or maybe send money to an overseas vendor, maybe you bought something from a store that's in a different continent, or you bought something on eBay, even just backing us on Patreon, there are companies making money on handling the complex back end of a transaction that involves much more than your bank and whoever you're paying. We've talked in the past about how Apple Pay worked, and you start to realize when you dig into how this transaction works and where your information is going, that it is not as simple as I put in my credit card, the credit card company then sends money to the merchant, and I pay the credit card company. There are all kinds of authorizations and different companies handling different parts of those authorizations in between that I know a couple of people in our audience that work in the financial industry know of, but most people don't. That's why you likely glazed over the story about Fidelity National Information Services agreeing to buy WorldPay for $35 billion, because you're like, who are they? But McKinsey predicts that global payments, this back-end system between what you see and what your merchants see, is set to reach $3 trillion in revenue by 2023. That's not $3 trillion in what you're sending. That's the money that these companies bring in with their cut of the transactions. That's why the industry is quickly consolidating at a time when a lot of industries are holding off on consolidation because of uncertainty around trade situations in the world right now. WorldPay just merged with Vantiv last year in advance of this new acquisition that they're doing with Fidelity National Investments. And back in January, Fiserv bought a payment processor called First Data Corp for $22 billion. The other thing to realize about this is these companies have ironclad rules over how you can get your payments processed with them. So if you are a company like PayPal or even Patreon or eBay or somebody that wants to process payments through them, you have to follow their rules, and you generally can't talk about it. You generally can't tell anybody if the payment processor makes you do something that the payment processor made you do it. In addition, because we're all starting to use more of these payments processors, we're keeping less money in our local bank. Now, if we're keeping our money in a big multinational bank, probably doesn't impact them as much. But your local community bank, your credit union, those companies, those banks are starting to see fewer deposits and something called deposit displacement. One thing that accounts for this are health savings accounts. That's something we have in the US where you can take a part of your paycheck and sock it aside to be used for tax-free spending on your healthcare. But there's also those peer-to-peer payments like Venmo or Square Cash. Venmo processed $64 billion last year. Square Cash processed $30 billion last year. And a lot of times when you get the money, you just leave it there until you want to pay somebody back. You don't put it in your bank. Merchant apps like the Starbucks app account for about $2 billion just sitting in that app, waiting for you to go and use that Starbucks card to buy a coffee. Then there are things that may be new to you, like robo-advisor tools. Robo-advisor tools are new startup services that say, you put $1,000 here and tell us how risky you want us to be. We'll decide where to put it. A lot of 401ks do this, but then now there's services where you can just do that with your own money. A.T. Kearney estimates $2 trillion will be active in that industry by 2020. There's also these new Robinhood, Acorn, Stash, MoneyLion, Chime. These are all different takes on being versions of banks. They're generally not banks themselves, but they will like auto invest your money, or they'll provide you more insight into your spending with the guarantee that you'll save more money because you'll know more about how you spend your money. $5.6 billion going into savings and investment apps like Acorn and Stash, $1.7 billion going into neobanks like MoneyLion and Chime. Point being, fintech, Sarah, is not just some fancy buzzword. It's a $1 billion industry that's happening largely out of the sight of what you do each day.
Yes, and besides the whole concept of the mom and pop, whatever, it's a bank, and this situation, is being crushed by this new technology. It's like, okay, well, that's always a little bit of a look at how the modern world is changing things around the Main Street. However, having more options in this case is a huge win for me, certainly on my life. I don't use all of the services that you just listed off, but I use a lot of them. And I also have, as of late, you have somebody who's like, I don't like Venmo. Can you Cash App me? Yeah, sure. I've got that on my phone. Oh, I don't use Cash App. Can you Zelle me? That works with my bank better. Yeah, sure. I've got that on my phone. It's like, it's a little bit of a, okay, who wants what and how do you do it? And do we have compatible OSs and that whole thing? There's a little bit of that going on. But for the most part, when I forget my wallet to go grab a coffee, boy, am I glad Apple Pay is at the register. And I understand that merchants sometimes have a little bit more complications on their end, sometimes more fees on their end. And yeah, I guess it's probably a nuisance more than anything that they can't, mumble and grumble about it, or have to jack up prices that end up being passed on to us. But I don't know. I find it hard to be outraged at all of the convenience that my life is enjoying with the adoption of these services.
And trust me, I'm the last person who wants you to be more outraged. That is certainly not my point at all. My point is you should be aware without being outraged about what's happening out there, because I think a lot of folks don't realize that when they're using these apps or using even just their credit card, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. And when merchants do things that are odd, like say, oh, I'm not taking money from that person or that region anymore, a lot of times we blame the merchants. when it may be the payment processor that's decided, too risky, not going to take it, not going to do it. And also, you can't say that it's our decision. That happens out there. And also when you want to transfer money, especially if you're doing remittances overseas, the fees can vary wildly just depending on where you're sending it and what these payment processors have decided that day is going to be the best way to route it and charge for it. So it's a much more complex situation behind the scenes. I don't have an explanation of that today, but I just thought it would be interesting to hang on the news hook of this acquisition, the awareness that you've got tens of billions of dollars out there happening, even though it's only taking fractions of a cent from your particular transaction, because we have so many of these transactions happening now. The scale is gargantuan.
I'm not sure when all y'all were last in a bank branch, but I was in one recently because I had to take out some money, and there was time was of the essence, and it was too much to do online because for security reasons there are like weekly and daily caps depending on what service you use, but most of them have various caps. And the place was bustling, and I don't know what everybody else was doing there, but it was like I had to go into a physical bank and talk to somebody to make what I needed to happen. So I don't see, and I have a huge bank. I bank with one of the most biggest banks in the world. So it's definitely not a local credit union that I was in. So it might be a little bit different in the smaller banks, but I don't see branches going away anytime soon. They probably just will cater to more situations like the one that I was in.
Well, and for the big banks, that's very true because it is cost effective to continue to operate those branches for various reasons that they can absorb the cost of because they can do so many different things. Whereas your credit union, which may have 6 or 7 branches, might have a harder time justifying that because they just don't have the economy of scale for it.
Exactly. Hey, thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. Whether you have a small or a big bank, we love you the same. Submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. If you hang out on Facebook, perhaps join our group or hang out there a little more often. Facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow. All right, let's check in with Chris Christensen, the amateur traveler, who's got a personal account this week on facial recognition in U.S. airports.
Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler with another Tech in Travel Minute. Last week on the show, you discussed facial recognition systems in airports, and there are certainly some creepy things about that, although it's interesting to note that just last summer, facial recognition systems in the U.S. airports caught the first imposter, somebody who did not match their passport, and it was caught with an automatic system. Didn't turn out to be a terrorist or something, but it was somebody trying to sneak in the country. But I'd like to compare it with the system we had before. My son used to get stopped at security all the time because his name, Mike Christensen, which is not an uncommon name, was on the list of people who were on the no-fly list. Well, my son was 10. And so really, just a simple look at a photograph probably would have fixed that. So maybe the old system we're replacing also had some flaws. I'm Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler.
Yes, not all systems are perfect for sure. That's really interesting, Chris. Thank you for that. All right, let's finish up with a couple emails from the mailbag.
Yeah, we got an email from Tony. You might have noticed if you watched our video version of Friday's show that Patrick Norton looked amazing. Well, he always looks amazing, but the quality of his picture had the rest of us kind of drooling and asking lots of questions. So Tony says, I'm a Sony camera user. Patrick was using a Sony camera as well. I have an A6300 for lighter photo projects and video. I also have a much more expensive full frame Sony, but the A6000 series cameras are great. However, wanted to point out, if you're considering one, and Tom said that he might be, the A6400 just came out, would probably be ideal. It includes 4K, better autofocus, unlimited video recording limit with improved battery efficiency, and less overheating issues. A little bit more expensive, but still very affordable as far as nice cameras go at $900 for the body only. With a kit lens, it's a little bit more, but I'd get the body only and spend a little extra cash for a nicer lens. The kit lens, not that sharp, and the small and variable maximum aperture makes it harder to use in low light. Just my unsolicited advice.
Thank you, Tony. Good stuff. And Andrew added one thing that can get left out when discussing the breakup of Facebook, the potential breakup of Facebook and other monopolies, is the rules around their interaction after being split up. If Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram were technically 3 separate companies, but they still gave each other special treatment, essentially still acting as one, then nothing is gained. About a decade ago, the New Zealand government split up the country's largest telco into 3: infrastructure, retail, and business wholesale. But the key was they could not give each other special deals. Any wholesale rates offered to their sister retailer had to also be available to every other internet retailer. And now we have dozens of internet providers in every city, all paying dues to the infrastructure company. It's a win-win. If Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram were separate companies, it would be interesting to know what trade rules would be in place to ensure that they actually created competition.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, especially when the pivot to privacy from Zuckerberg last week was, I'm going to make sure Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram all interoperate on messaging. You know?
Right, yeah.
So
indistinguishable, in fact.
One could conceive that if that were to happen at post-breakup, they would have to offer that integration to other messaging apps outside of the former Facebook family.
Oh, wouldn't that be?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Girl can dream. Thanks to everybody who emails us, and thanks to everybody who supports DTNS. We love you all.
Yes, our goal each month is to get one more patron than last month, and you could be the person to put us over the top. If you're not already a member of DTNS, you can get an ad-free RSS feed, special episodes from myself on how we do the show, special episodes looking back on the tech news of the past. We looked back at March 2014 last week for the co-executive producers. Find out all about it and sign up at patreon.com/DTNS.
If you've got a question, you got a comment, you got a burning gripe, we'll take them. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com is where to email us. We're live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC. And you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
Back tomorrow with Patrick Beja. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
It's 22:30 UTC, right?
It's 20. It just says 22 in there. So I just say 20.
Do we have daylight saving time? Did that? We should make sure.
If you look at 2030 UTC online, it converts to 4:30 p.m. Eastern.
Got it.
And also, last daylight savings, we said 2030 for like 8 months.
Right now, it's 2100. So 2030 is correct. It's wrong in the template. How did that happen?
It's all right. I don't care what it says. I just say it right.
Correct you in the show.
I mean, we've been doing this for 2 weeks. I was just like,
said it, I was like,
well, every time I'm like,
right.
Change the template, Sarah, change the template. But I just know what to say. So I just keep not changing it. I don't know.
But we were saying it right before. Also, now it's wrong in all the show notes. So we got to go back and change.
Oh, shoot. I forgot about that. I was thinking that no one knew the mistake except us.
No, everybody sees these lineups because they become the public show notes.
Yeah, it's 20. And then standard time is 21. This is my, you know, it's.
So what happened was we changed the template the wrong direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was correct.
Well,
when it was
because you think we're springing forward,
right.
So it makes sense, but UTC is crazy.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
UTC doesn't move. That's the thing.
Right.
All right. So yeah, it said 2130 on March 8th, and it should have gone to 2030, and instead we did 22 in the template. All right, it's all fixed now. Good.
Yay!
Again, Tom, if we just got rid of time zones.
Right. Seriously.
We should get rid of the metric system. That's one thing I don't like.
The metric system is the opposite of your argument. Why you gotta pick?
I knew I'd get Roger on my side.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I just don't understand who would ever want to use the metric system.
Most of the world.
Gosh, you're so easy to rile up. Did you get upset when you were teased as a child?
Not only about the metric system.
I think all kids get upset when they get teased.
About the metric system. Yeah.
I know a few adults where I'm like, you got to learn to get teased a little bit more.
I know.
But I'm not talking about you. The metric system is just, it's just sort of a sad system.
The metric system is that one thing where I'm like,
That's how I feel about standard versus daylight time. It's one of those things where I will get unnecessarily riled up when someone gets it wrong.
I think too, the fact, like the daylight saving time aspect of this mistake that we were just talking about is what angers me. I'm like, we just need one time zone. And so when Amos said, this is why we shouldn't have time zones. And I was like, yes, standardization. And then you immediately were like, I wish we didn't have that big standard. I was like, that's the opposite.
Sometimes I say things specifically to upset you.
No,
I'm sorry.
But who gets to be sitting?
We got some great titles today.
Oh yeah, what do we got in here in the showbot.chatroom.net?
Number one would be Myspace, Misplaced, my mixtape.
Oh, so sad.
I love the alliteration.
Yeah, it's good. Feel the beat of the rhythm of the heart.
Apple watches my heart. That's pretty good.
El DeBarge, right? Isn't that that song? Yeah.
El DeBarge, that's correct.
I don't even know where that came from. How do I know
Tapping doesn't always pay.
How do I know the song, right?
They also did Who's Johnny? Who's Johnny?
Oh yeah.
Or Short Circuit.
Is that from Short Circuit? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Which if you haven't watched those in a while, go back and try to do about 15-20 minutes of one of the Short Circuit movies.
Oh, they're not good.
They
I mean,
do
the
not
first
age
one
very well.
really is the only one.
A lot of movies don't age well, which is why.
But Short Circuit in particular is almost unwatchable.
Short Circuit 2 wasn't impressive to me then. I can't imagine it would have aged better. But my brother loved the original Short Circuit.
The first Short Circuit isn't. I actually still like it because it's very 80s. 2 is just bad, even for when it was released. It was just
that's what I was saying.
But
I don't think I don't think going back and watching Short Circuit 2 makes your point. You got to watch Short Circuit 1 to just realize just how badly it aged.
I remember how old I was when Short Circuit came out because I remember we watched it in maybe when it came to VHS because we watched it in school one day. I don't know why. It was like
it's offensive, but not for the obvious. For the obvious reasons. But I don't know. I liked it. It was very much of the.
There are a lot of offensive 80s movies that just sort of went over our heads at the time. Howard the Duck. Remember that movie?
That was another Ali Sheedy movie.
Yeah.
Because Short Circuit also had that. That was
and the Ferris Bueller Principal. He was in that, right?
Yeah, because he played the villain. Yeah. I loved Howard the Duck. I thought it was amazing. I never knew it was a comic book, but I just loved the movie.
Oh, it was a terrible movie. Terrible movie.
Oh, but it was sense. It was very popular with kids. We all loved that movie.
Either, so.
I didn't realize it was a comic book until just now.
They're going to make a series out of it.
Ali Sheedy was in X-Men Apocalypse.
She was?
Yeah. I didn't watch that one. What did we go with? MySpace? Misplaced my mixtape?
I put MySpace, Misplaced my mixtape in the doc. I will always put the title in the doc for you.
Thank you, Dad.
Tom Merritt, our father.
Who art over here.
Who art
in the dock.
Who art in the valley.
Hallowed be thy house.
Hey, Tom, if you don't mind, I'm going to throw a quick plug out there. I've got Rich Straffolino of Daily Tech Headlines on Ritual Misery with me this week.
Now, what if I had minded? You just
then I just you was it act first, beg for
ask for forgiveness afterwards. Yes, how you get what you want.
Don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. Yeah, thankfully, would have been totally fine with that, even if I had known ahead of time. That's awesome.
Yeah, so might be able to get a little unfiltered Rich Straffolino on Thursday night.
Woo woo!
Find out the secrets behind one of your favorite Daily Tech Headlines hosts.
Yes.
Well,
I mean, your favorite on Monday and Friday, anyway.
Yeah, Tuesday and Thursday, obviously the best days.
Yeah, Wednesday is your pinnacle. I mean, it's right there in the middle of the week.
just holding on, keeping everybody balanced.
I hadn't thought about the pyramid aspect of that.
Tom Merritt, the news hump.
Why haven't I gone by that before now?
I don't know.
What could possibly be
wrong? Have that one for free.
Yeah,
I see a new Twitter tagline coming. Wow.
Or you could be a podcast show, the news hump.
Maybe I'll change the name of editor's desk.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, did you all have good St. Patrick's Days?
You know, I didn't celebrate in any way. Didn't wear green. Didn't drink any beer. But I had a nice day yesterday. Did a lot of OS 10 upgrading. Felt good. Felt like I got some stuff done. Yeah.
Like the ancient Celts.
Yeah. I celebrated my heritage in the best way possible. My family would have been very proud.
It was like my forefathers did.
Oh, yeah.
Did you do it in an awkward skirt? Wandering around your house upgrading OS?
No, I didn't. Didn't wear
really
a skirt.
Rounded it out.
No. No, but I did play a bagpipe the entire time.
Well, that's okay.
That hurling.
Eating corned beef. Upgrading.
I told these guys before that we started recording. I went to a British pub and had corned beef and cabbage on the 16th.
Okay.
I just like thumbed my nose at the whole concept.
Yeah. I don't like St. Patrick's Day. And it's not I don't dislike the concept of St. Patrick's Day, but it is amateur hour if you're going out and about, at least in my experience. You know, I don't want to go to a bar on St. Patrick's Day. People are drunk at 4 p.m. and acting silly. And the fact that it fell on a Sunday this year is like even worse, because then you can really be like drunk at 4 p.m.
We were going to get sushi yesterday on St. Patrick's Day. And then the place we parked to investigate the sushi place ended up having a really cool looking pizza place. So we're like, pizza sounds pretty good. And it was not crazy. Like it was not full of, amateurs. So we ended up going into a pub and having pizza on St. Patrick's Day. And I had a cider.
Well, that sounds nice. Was the pizza good?
It was really good.
There you go.
I would go back.
I missed my to get a Shamrock Shake.
You missed it?
Yeah. I don't know why. I always get one every.
What is it? What's the flavor?
Sugar.
Oh.
The flavor is sugar.
I don't.
Is there another flavor besides sweetness? Is it like minty or because it's green or no? I've never had one.
It's just kind of like it's like cream to mint, but without the alcohol.
So it's minty. All right.
I played Civilization 6 with my son for pretty much the entire day.
That sounds fun.
It was.
We shall build up the world and destroy it together.
Well, he was brand new to Civ 6, so it was kind of, greening him in. Does that count? I think that counts.
Did you hit Ireland at all? Or no?
No, I played France by a random selection, and I don't know who he's playing yet because we haven't encountered each other in game.
I won't tell you. Okay.
Well, who knows? Maybe.
I thought you were going to say you played the English and you invaded Ireland and starved them. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True to history.
Yeah. Not so much.
Come out, you black and tans.
Friend of mine who grew up in Boston, who's Italian, he was like, St. Patrick's Day is the day that Italians don't go outside. Because Irish and Italian people sometimes clash, especially in a town like Boston. I was like, really? And he was like, oh yeah, like St. Patrick's Day is like you hide. Like it's a day of hiding. I was like, that's not what we did in Sebastopol. We just wore green.
Grew apples.
And grew apples. And sometimes ate green apples.
I did stumble across a odd conversation between two Lowe's employees about whether or not the female employee should pinch the male employee due to his not wearing green. That was very awkward. And,
I didn't wear green on St. Patrick's Day. Eileen was wearing green by accident. Like we sat down to eat and she's like, hey, I'm actually wearing green. I didn't even plan that. And I said, pinch me.
I went through a brief period. I was very young, but I definitely believed that leprechauns existed, and I wanted 3 wishes, and so I would like.
I thought you just got the gold. You get 3 wishes.
I don't know. I mean, there's probably lots of versions of the story. In my version, if you find a 4-leaf clover, a leprechaun will appear and you get 3 wishes.
Sure.
And I already knew what my wishes were going to be. Like I had thought it through, like at age 6, like extensively. And so it was like on St. Patrick's Day, it was like hanging out around clovers, looking for them, like calling to the leprechaun. Like I really did this.
Hmm.
I think at some point my parents were like, this is unhealthy. Like there's no leprechaun. Like there just isn't. This isn't going to happen. Get out of the weeds.
I've been weary of wishes ever since I started playing D&D. I just people make wishes for their birthday, and I'm like, yeah, you sure you're asking for what you want?
Be careful. It's like a contract. My brother texted me, my sister, and my mom yesterday. If we have a small amount of Irish heritage, does that make us leprechauns?
Because you'd be small?
And my sister responded, no, it makes us Irish.
Partially.
To which I responded, 23andMe says I'm Irish, and anybody who disagrees could fight me.
Definitely Irish.
And my mom just kind of bowed out of the conversation at that point.
It's funny on a group text, you can always tell the person who's just like, I don't like this conversation because like 20 things will go back and forth and they just never chime in. And you know that it's not because they're busy. They're just like, you're dumb. Yeah. Sometimes that person is me. I'm on a lot of group texts.
Well, speaking of bowing out, how about we say goodbye to our video folks?
Yes. We say
parting is such sweet sorrow.
Thank you, video.
Again tomorrow, though.
Audio folks, stick around though. There's more to come.